In the wilderness, sometimes the most desperate man must decide: save a life or keep burying his own. The cabin stood like a scar against the endless Colorado wilderness, a place where silence pressed harder than any lawman's badge. For 6 winters, Marcus Holloway had hidden here, burying himself in snow and shadows, hoping the mountains could smother the memories that hunted him like wolves. But memories never stayed buried. They clawed at him every night. The sound of collapsing rock, the fire rushing through the mine shaft, the screams he never heard because he was miles away, drunk on cheap whiskey and meaner thoughts. That was the day Ayanna, his wife, and Annie, their little girl, died. And that was the day Marcus lost his right to hope. He had once been a man of laughter and long plans. Now he was a man of silence. His beard grew thick and untamed, his eyes hollowed by grief. Some nights he swore he could hear his daughter's laugh carried on the wind, only for it to twist into a cry that froze his blood. Other nights, it was the mine itself that haunted him, the echo of explosions rolling through his dreams until he jolted awake, sweat soaking his shirt, fists clenched around the phantom of a whiskey bottle. The cabin was no home, only a cage made of guilt. Its walls smelled of smoke and damp pine. Its floor creaked under the weight of his regret. The fire he built each morning fought the cold, but never the emptiness. Outside, the snow stretched white and merciless, an unbroken tombstone for everything he had lost. Marcus thought the world had ended that day in the mine, and somehow he was the only one left wandering in the ashes. Every sunrise asked him the same question: why are you still here? And every night, the mountains whispered the same answer back: because punishment is all you deserve. But storms don't last forever. And on the morning the snow fell heaviest, when Marcus thought he would not see another spring, fate was already moving toward his door. The storm arrived like judgment. Marcus had seen blizzards before, but this one carried a different weight, as if the mountains themselves had decided to bury him at last. The wind howled through the pines, snow tearing sideways across the ridge, rattling his cabin walls like the fists of the dead. He stood at the door, axe in hand, daring the storm to finish what the mine had started 6 years ago. That's when he saw them. 2 figures stumbled through the white haze, no more than dark shapes against the blizzard's fury. For a moment Marcus thought they were ghosts, come to drag him down into the same pit where his family lay. But then the smaller figure fell to her knees, clutching at the larger one who collapsed face first into the snow. His heart hammered. He should have turned away. Should have let the wilderness do what it always did: claim the weak. He'd promised himself he'd never carry anyone else's life on his shoulders again. But something pulled at him. Something he thought he'd lost with Ayanna and Annie. He dropped the axe and plunged into the storm. The first body he reached was light as ash. An old Apache woman, her face carved by age and sickness, barely breathing. Her lips were cracked, blood on her teeth, but her hands still had the strength to clutch his coat with desperate claws. "Please," she rasped, her voice a ghost of sound. "My daughter. She needs a man who won't die for her." Marcus's eyes lifted, and through the swirling snow he met the gaze of the younger one. She was kneeling, snow to her thighs, her hair whipped black across her face, but her eyes, those eyes were clear as obsidian, burning through the storm. Beautiful wasn't the word. Dangerous was closer to it. The girl's stare froze him harder than the blizzard. He knew that look. It was the same look Ayanna had given him on the last morning when she begged him not to go to the mine. A look that said she already knew the cost of beauty, the weight of love, and the danger of men who could not resist either. "Damn you," Marcus muttered under his breath, though he wasn't sure who he was cursing: them, himself, or God. He scooped the old woman into his arms, her frail body weighing less than his rifle. "Come on," he growled to the girl. "If you want her alive, move." The girl rose without a word, her step steady despite the storm, as if she had learned long ago to walk while the world tried to kill her. Back in the cabin, the wind slammed the door shut behind them like a final verdict. Marcus laid the old woman down near the fire, her breath shallow but present. The girl, her daughter, knelt beside her instantly, hands moving with quiet skill. She stripped away wet hides, wrapped her mother in blankets, and spooned warm broth from the pot Marcus had kept simmering only for himself. She did not beg. She did not think. She simply worked, her movements sharp with purpose, as though she had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Marcus hovered near the firewood stack, pretending to busy himself, but his eyes kept betraying him. The girl's dress clung to her frame, damp from snow, revealing the kind of curves that had started wars in smaller tribes. He cursed himself and split a log with too much force. "You're not what I expected," the girl said suddenly. Her voice carried the cadence of boarding school English, touched with something older, deeper. Marcus grunted. "What did you expect?" "A man alone this long," she said, her dark eyes flicking toward him. "Usually they stare." "I've had my fill of staring at things I can't keep." The words came out harsher than he intended. The girl's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Good." Her mother coughed then, crimson staining her palm. Marcus crouched low, his instincts betraying him once more. He saw in the old woman's face not just sickness but determination, a final mission burning in dying eyes. "Two men already dead," she whispered between coughs. "Fighting over her. The tribe cast us out. She's cursed, they say, beauty that breaks the order of things." Marcus felt that weight again pressing on his chest, the same weight that had crushed him for years. Decisions, responsibility, a choice he didn't ask for, but one that sat squarely in his lap now. 6 years of hiding, 6 years of avoiding anything that mattered. And here was fate, bleeding on his floor, daring him to choose. The girl finally looked up from her work, her gaze steady, her hands still cradling her mother's head. "My name is Luna," she said softly, like a challenge. Marcus Holloway had no answer. He only felt the storm clawing at the cabin walls, and the storm inside him answering back. And that's where the story sharpens, where a broken man faces the kind of choice that could either redeem him or destroy him all over again. What would you do, standing in his boots, with the storm howling outside and danger staring at you through a young woman's eyes? If this tale gripped you, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves the raw, untamed frontier as much as you do. Because out here in the wild west of the human heart, every choice can change everything. The storm did not end that night. It pressed against the cabin like a living thing, its voice howling through the pines, rattling the shutters until sleep became impossible. Marcus sat by the fire, sharpening a knife that didn't need sharpening, stealing glances at the two women he had dragged out of the snow. Ayana, the mother, slept fitfully, her breath rattling in her chest like dry leaves. Luna, her daughter, tended her with hands that were gentle but efficient, never trembling, never hesitating. Marcus found himself watching the girl far too closely, and each time he caught himself, he cursed under his breath. She carried herself with a stillness that unsettled him. She was not meek, not frightened, not grateful in the way most would have been. No, she sat by her mother's side like a sentry, like someone who had already lived too many lifetimes of loss. Every now and then her gaze would cut toward him, sharp and unflinching, as though she knew exactly what haunted him. By the third day, when Ayana's fever broke, Marcus thought maybe the danger had passed. But danger in the wilderness never came only from weather or hunger. It came from people. Always people. He was splitting logs near the cabin wall when Ayana's voice called him inside. She waited until Luna had left for the stream, carrying a pot to fetch water. Her eyes were clearer now, though still rimmed with the red of fever. She fixed him with a stare that weighed heavier than the mountains. "You think I'm a fool?" she said, her voice rasping but steady. "Trading my daughter like livestock." Marcus shook his head. "I think you're a mother doing what mothers do." Ayana coughed into her hand, leaving a trace of blood across her palm. "Look at her, Marcus Holloway. Really look. You see beauty. But do you see the curse that comes with it?" Through the cabin window, Marcus caught a glimpse of Luna kneeling at the stream, water cascading down her arms as she washed the trail dust from her hair. Even in simple movement, she seemed to breathe danger. Her body bent to the task with unconscious grace, the kind that could unravel a man faster than whiskey or cards. Ayana's voice hardened. "She's not evil, but beauty like that. It makes good men do evil things. It makes them forget wives, abandon duty, challenge friends, kill brothers. 2 braves already dead in single combat over her. 3 more wounded. The council said she disrupted the natural order. So they cast us out? Marcus's jaw tightened. He had heard curses before. He had watched men swear that fate was written in blood or stars. He had buried enough to know that sometimes curses weren't carved by gods, but by the weakness of men themselves. You think I can stop what others couldn't? He asked quietly. I think you're already lost, Ayana said. The question is whether you're lost enough to survive her. That night, Luna prepared venison with wild onions, filling the cabin with the kind of warmth Marcus hadn't known in years. She moved like she belonged there, setting the table, tending the fire, her hips swaying with a rhythm that felt older than the land itself. When she bent low to stir the pot, the firelight caught the curve of her throat, and Marcus turned away, splitting another log that did not need splitting. Tell me about them, Luna said suddenly. Marcus froze, his hand on the coffee cup. About who? Your wife, your child. Her voice was steady, but her eyes watched him like a hawk, his throat clenched. What makes you think? The way you look at me, she interrupted, like I'm already gone, like you've already buried me. The words cut deeper than any accusation. Marcus set the cup down slowly, his hands trembling. He spoke of Ayana, his wife, good, pure, the kind of woman who made a man believe the world could be kind. He spoke of Annie, who would have been 8, who had her mother's laugh. And then he confessed the truth that had carved him hollow. He had been drinking while they died, cursing God with other men, far from the mine he was supposed to watch over. If I'd been where I belonged, he whispered, I'd be dead too. His voice broke. Maybe that would have been better. For a long moment, silence filled the cabin. Then Luna leaned across the table, her hand covering his. Her skin was calloused from work but soft where it mattered. My first suitor was named Etched, she said, her voice low. He killed his own brother over me, with a skinning knife. The second, Daniel, tried to steal me at a peace ceremony. 12 dead before the night was over. Do you know what that feels like? To carry death in your shadow? Marcus tried to pull his hand away, but not before feeling how perfectly her fingers fit against his. The difference is, Luna whispered, you weren't even there. The blood on your soul is memory. Mine is flesh. The honesty in her voice hit harder than a bullet. Marcus stared at the fire, afraid to look at her. Why are you telling me this? He asked finally. Because my mother is dying, Luna said, her voice almost breaking. And when she does, you'll have to decide what to do with me. Outside, the storm raged like it wanted to tear the cabin apart. Inside, firelight painted their faces with shadows, and 2 damaged souls sat in silence. One running from ghosts, the other carrying them in her wake. Ayana would not last long. And Marcus knew that when her time came, he would no longer be able to pretend he was just a bystander in this story. Ayana died on a Tuesday morning, quiet as snow melting on stone. Marcus sat beside the bed long after her breathing stopped, staring at the stillness that filled the room. He had seen death before, more than he cared to count. But this was different. This death carried a weight he could not set down. He buried his first family because of his weakness. Now fate had placed another family in his hands, and already it was slipping through his fingers. Luna did not cry. She sat beside her mother's body, braiding and unbraiding the gray strands of hair with a patience that cut Marcus deeper than wailing ever could. Her eyes were dry, but her shoulders trembled as if her body carried the grief her heart refused to show. When Marcus finally laid a hand on her shoulder, she flinched, then stilled. We'll bury her on the hill, he said, next to my family. You don't have to, she whispered. Yes, I do. They dug together in frozen earth by lantern light, their breath steaming in the night. The soil was hard as iron, and each shovelful rang with the sound of struggle. Sweat dampened Luna's blouse, clinging to her skin as she worked beside him with a grim determination. Her coat slipped from her shoulders, but she didn't pause to pull it back. She kept digging until the ground opened enough to accept her mother. When the last stone was placed, the 2 of them stood in silence, their shadows long in the lantern's glow. The air was sharp with cold, but the silence between them burned hotter than fire. What happens now? Luna asked, brushing dirt from her hands. Marcus stared at the dark line of trees. You could head east, Denver, maybe. Find work. Maybe marry a shopkeeper. Her voice cut the night like a blade. Is that what you want? He should have said yes. The safe answer. The righteous answer. But standing under the moonlight, dirt on his hands, and a woman's eyes waiting for truth, righteousness felt like another man's luxury. No, he said finally. His voice was raw, stripped bare. No, it's not. Luna stepped closer. In the pale glow, her eyes looked like black stones pulled from the riverbed, hard, beautiful, unyielding. Then what do you want, Marcus Holloway? His breath caught. He could have lied, could have spoken of companionship, of necessity, but lies had poisoned him before. He lifted a hand and touched her face, his rough thumb tracing the sharp line of her cheekbone. I want to stop being afraid of wanting things. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, the weight she carried seemed to slip. She leaned into his touch like a starving animal seeking warmth. Then stop being afraid. The kiss came slow, hesitant at first, like testing thin ice. But then the ice broke, and they fell through together. Her lips demanded as much as they gave, fierce and unrelenting, as if she had been waiting for this moment her entire life. Inside the cabin, the fire snapped and hissed, sparks leaping as though the storm outside had found its twin within those walls. Luna moved with quiet certainty, adding logs to the flames, her every step deliberate. When she turned back to him, something in her gaze had shifted. This isn't gratitude, she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she unlaced her boots. This isn't me paying a debt. Then what is it? Her boots thudded to the floor. She began working at the buttons of her blouse, each one deliberate, unhurried, her fingers steady despite the storm raging outside. It's a woman choosing a man she trusts not to die for her. Marcus's breath caught. He had faced gun barrels and collapsing mines, but nothing had ever terrified him the way her steady, deliberate stripping away of barriers did now. He tried to look away, but her voice pulled him back. 6 years, she said, her blouse sliding from her shoulders, leaving only the thin chemise clinging to her body. 6 years you've punished yourself. 6 years denying yourself the right to want. To live. The firelight carved her body in shadow and gold. The thin fabric revealed more than it hid. The outline of breasts that rose with each breath, the curve of hips meant for a man's hands. You don't have to, Marcus whispered. I know. She let the blouse fall. That's why I want to. He stood frozen, the storm inside him louder than the one outside. For 6 years he had lived like a ghost, hollowed out by grief. Now here was life itself, standing before him, daring him to claim it. Luna's eyes never left his as she reached for him. Your turn. Marcus's hands shook as he fumbled with his shirt buttons, clumsy with disuse and desire. She stepped forward to help, her bare breasts brushing against his chest. The touch was electric, shattering his restraint. When at last the shirt fell away, her palms pressed flat against his scarred torso, tracing the jagged lines that told stories of cave-ins, bar fights, and foolish mistakes. So many wounds, she murmured. Her fingertips lingered on one scar above his ribs. But all healed now. Some scars make us stronger. He wanted to believe her. When her mouth claimed his again, the kiss was hunger itself, wild and unrelenting. Her body molded against his, all soft curves and warm skin, while his hands roamed her back, learning every shape, every shiver. They fell together onto the blankets near the fire, a tangle of limbs and whispered confessions. The storm outside roared, but inside they built a different kind of storm, one of heat and desperation, of two broken souls finding solace in each other's arms. For Marcus, it was more than desire, it was resurrection. For Luna, it was more than survival. It was choice. And when at last they lay entwined, the fire burning low, Marcus realized the truth that had terrified him for years. Sometimes salvation didn't come dressed in forgiveness or righteousness. Sometimes it came dressed in danger, in desire, in the one thing he had sworn never to touch again, hope. The fire had burned down to embers when sleep finally claimed them. their bodies tangled beneath the blankets. For the first time in 6 winters, Marcus Holloway did not dream of the mine, of fire, of screams carried away on smoke. He dreamed of silence and of a woman's steady heartbeat against his chest. But peace in the wilderness never lasted long. By spring, Luna moved through the cabin with the ease of someone who had always belonged there. She hummed while cooking, her voice low and melodic, filling spaces Marcus had once thought would stay hollow forever. She washed clothes in the stream, water sparkling on her bronze skin like scattered diamonds. She planted herbs and stitched his shirts with quiet focus. Each small act cut deeper into Marcus's defenses than any confession of love ever could. And then came the secret she carried. One morning, after bread dough had risen warm against the hearth, Luna pressed his hand against her belly, her eyes darker than he had ever seen them. "It's been weeks," she whispered. "I wanted to be sure. Marcus, we're not alone anymore." His hand froze. A child. The word struck like lightning. Fear surged first, raw and crushing. He had buried a wife and daughter once. Could he bear to gamble again with life, knowing the world was merciless? But when Luna took his chin in her hands, forcing his eyes to meet hers, she spoke with a steadiness that broke through the storm. "You didn't fail them," she said. "You can't be everywhere, protect everyone. But you can be here, with me, with this child. What if this time is different?" The question lingered in his bones, and slowly, Marcus realized the truth. He wanted it to be. By autumn, the cabin shook with the cries of a newborn. Small, perfect, furious with the force of life itself. Marcus held the boy in trembling arms, tears carving lines through the dirt on his face. Luna, exhausted but radiant, whispered the name, Samuel Hope Holloway. Hope. The word itself was a dare. A declaration that even broken men and exiled daughters could build something lasting from the ashes of sorrow. Yet hope did not come without whispers. The townsfolk eyed them with suspicion, whispering about the Apache woman in the cabin on the ridge, about her beauty and the curse she carried. But whispers could not touch what they had forged. Marcus and Luna stood together against them, unyielding as the mountains. On Samuel's first birthday, they climbed the hill together. The hill where Ayanna rested, and where Marcus's wife and daughter lay beneath the frozen soil. Luna carried the child while Marcus laid wildflowers on the graves. The weight of guilt that had haunted him for 6 years seemed to shift, not vanish, but transform into something else. Gratitude. "Do you think they would have approved?" Luna asked quietly. Marcus looked at her, the woman who had walked into his storm and refused to leave, the son who carried both their blood, both their hope. He finally answered the question that had gnawed at him since the mine explosion. "I think they would have wanted me to stop being afraid," he said. "And I think they would have wanted us to be happy." The wind carried his words across the hilltop, where grief and love shared the same ground. He no longer saw graves. He saw roots, a place where old sorrow fed new beginnings. As they walked back down toward the cabin, Samuel babbling in his mother's arms, Marcus felt the world tilt. The wilderness was still cruel, still untamed, still waiting to test them. But for the first time in years, he did not shrink from it. He carried his family with him, into the storm, into tomorrow. Because sometimes salvation arrived wearing the face of the very thing you feared most. And sometimes the greatest courage wasn't to fight or to flee, but to choose hope. If this story spoke to you, if it made you feel the chill of the storm, the weight of loss, and the fragile fire of redemption, then don't let it end here. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this tale with others who carry scars. Because out on the untamed frontier of the human heart, every story of survival deserves to be heard.